Can you beat one of Roblox's hardest obbies without dying? This is Nooby's difficulty chart, a 200 stage obby full of intense mechanisms designed to make you die. Beating this obby without dying means I have to go through all 200 of these stages flawlessly. And if I die once, I go back to the very start and have to redo everything. So let's see how long it'll take me to beat this obby without dying. In my first few attempts, I began to die a ton of times, with most of the deaths being caused by this one game feature, where if you skip a checkpoint and hit a checkpoint after it, you'll get teleported to your last saved checkpoint, which for me, was at the very start. I died a total of 7 times from this feature, until the owner joined me and told me about this other game feature, where if you make it to stage 40 without dying, you can rebirth and go back to level 0. So, using this method, I can fully remove one of the largest death-causing mechanics in this game, and don't have to pay as much attention to where I'm walking, allowing me to progress all that much faster. As I continued to progress and got further into the obby, I realized just how much time I was wasting by doing this. At this point, I have wasted over 10 hours trying to do this obby, in which I haven't even gotten past stage 100 yet, when I have to get to 200. And so, I decided to change up my strategy, because this wasn't gonna work. After thinking of a new plan, I realized that a much more efficient way of doing this would be to first just beat the entire thing. By doing this, I can familiarize myself with the obby, and when I reach the dreadful end stages, I might actually have a chance of beating them, instead of having a guaranteed chance of dying and having to restart. So, with this revision in my plan, I went to work, getting all the stages in the obby. After dying over 100 times and wasting 2 hours, I managed to make it to the end of the obby. I found that out of all 200 stages, I had most trouble at stage 199, the last stage, to which I had to spend 10 minutes trying to beat. However, this stage isn't the overall hardest stage due to the platform being at the bottom, catching you if you fall. And thanks to that platform, I only managed to die 6 times at this stage, and when I would have died at least 50 times more if it wasn't for that platform. So now that we've beaten the obby, let's try it again without dying. In theory, I should be able to make it much further, but the only way to test that is to just do more attempts. Let's see how it goes. After a few attempts, I managed to make it even further than last time, barely cutting short of stage 100, when before I was dying at stage 81. However, this so-thought improvement turned out to not work as well as I thought it would have, meaning we have to change our strategy again. Instead of simply trying to beat the obby without dying, and then resetting to stage 0 after I die, I decided that when I die, I would instead complete the rest of the obby to stage 200. This way, I can practice the further stages, making me even more familiar with the obby, and increases my chances of completing the entire thing without dying. So let's see how this strategy goes. On my very first attempt, I found that I died over 70 times, with over half of them coming in from the final 10 stages. However, most of the deaths before stage 190 were very avoidable, meaning this no dying run isn't actually as far away as I thought it was gonna be. On my very next attempt, I managed to die only around 40 times, with the final 10 stages taking over a third of those deaths. It was clear that my new strategy was working, so the only thing left to do was to lock in and keep going with the strategy.
Burning bridges and falling stars, purple skylines and broken hearts. There ain't no taking that to the moon. Out here trying, but there ain't no room. No, good intentions will fall apart. Yeah.
After spending another 3 hours on the obby, I found out I was only dying around 20 times with each run through, and managed to make it to stage 127 without dying, finally putting me closer to the end of the obby than the start. With each passing attempt, it was becoming more and more obvious that my no dying run was coming. So instead of rerunning the obby like I had before, I decided to focus on the final 40 stages, where I was dying the most. This way, I could minimize the amount of actual dying I have on every run through, and increase the chances of beating the entire thing without dying once. After getting good at the final stages in the obby for some time, I decided to rerun the entire obby in hopes to get that no dying run. At this point, the no dying run will just be mashing up all of my skills from every stage and not screwing up at any point in the obby. The only way for this to truly happen though was for me to lock in and start completing the obby as many times as possible, as one of those attempts was surely going to have no deaths in it. Sure enough, after a while, I started to get very far into the obby, passing stages 120, 140, and even 160 with ease. However, deep down, I knew that dying was inevitable. Beating 200 stages without dying once is nearly impossible, especially for the fact that screwing up becomes so much easier near the end of the obby. Sure enough, I had died at stage 164, only 36 stages away from the end of the obby. This death sent me into a downward spiral, to which I lost all my motivation to continue. And so, I was left with two options. I could either try to complete the entire obby without dying. This would cause me to waste dozens more hours and then hundreds of more attempts on. Or, I could stop here and quit at stage 164. With these two decisions in front of me, I picked... I had realized that just spending so many more days on the obby just wasn't gonna cut it anymore. I had failed at reaching stage 200 without dying after spending nearly 30 hours, but I did accomplish reaching stage 164. I also realized that I actually accomplished something else. This obby acted as a great learning experience to get better at Roblox obbies, something that I've been notoriously awful at in the past. I may not be able to complete all 200 of the stages without dying, but I was able to make it further than I had ever thought I would have made it before. Completing 164 stages in a row without dying is an intense feat, and something that takes tons of dedication and effort to achieve. And to me, that was like a win. I've learned how to be better at obbies, overcome intense challenges, and persevere in the face of continuous struggle. I pushed myself beyond what I thought I was capable of. Even though I didn't accomplish my goal, I had improved so much that looking back to how I was at obbies, it's impossible. For it's not about reaching your desired goal, but it's instead about the journey that you took to reach it, and the lessons you learned along the way.